What is up, guys, and welcome to another episode of Guarani Vision, the first ever podcast dedicated to Paraguayan football in English. As always, I'm Roberto Rojas, and joining me my two great co-hosts, Federico Perez and Ralph Hanna. And guys, here we are. It is the international break. There are still some Paraguayan games happening, but obviously the big game that we're talking about is from the national team. We're talking straight just off the day after Paraguay's win against Greece. They beat Paraguay. Paraguay has beaten Greece over there in Athens to kick off their 2026 year, and of course to continue to prepare for the World Cup as it gears up in a couple of months. We'll obviously talk about what's been going on, and yeah, I gotta say we gotta feel happy about ourselves. It's obviously this is the first time we were doing kind of these friendlies of these reactions to a single friendly. Obviously, we have the game against Morocco, and we have a special guest that we're going to talk to afterwards that will combine all in one episode. But yeah, I gotta go to firstly, I gotta go to Fede, I guess, first, because obviously I think everyone was really excited about this friendly. I think we can all wake up here this morning. We're obviously recording on a Saturday, with some positive vibes. I gotta say, I think there's a lot of high notes and very positive things that we can take from this game, and we'll talk about just the lineups and the players and just what we saw and what we didn't like as well. But overall, I think people can feel very content after what we saw yesterday over there in Greece.
I'm feeling happy. I'm feeling good about the team, guys. Hi, Roberto. Hi, Rob. Hi to everyone listening to Guarani Vision. Like always, here we are to react after this first game of the year, right? Special year, World Cup year. And I wanted to feel that with the team, that World Cup vibes, those players that are still fighting for their spot, those guys that were in there also. Everybody was here in particular in Paraguay, everybody was expecting to beat Greece because they're not going to the World Cup. We're supposed to be, this big team in South America right now. And people here in the country, they were actually expecting, just to go over Greece to get a big result. But it ended up just being a 1-0. But I felt good about the Ave Roja, in this first game. The first half, it probably felt more like a friendly. But in the second half, both teams really wanted to beat each other. And after we scored, Greece really got on us. They got a couple of opportunities, so I liked it when the midfield was able to establish themselves and they took over. I liked it, and the stars pulled up. We're talking about Enciso, Diego Gomez. They did their thing. We got a sneak a peek also at the new players, Mauricio Olveira. We got everything to talk about, Roberto. We got a bunch of things to get out of this first friendly of the year.
Yeah, absolutely. And Ralph, I think also the positive thing is that Paraguay's record in Europe continues, a positive record, I would say, because, it's always hard for Paraguay to, obviously get big results outside of, firstly, Paraguay as a whole, but also the South American continent. But, it's a pretty good record for Paraguay to continue their kind of streak in Europe. And obviously they'll play Morocco in France, and they'll be playing in Lens in a couple of days' time. But I think that's the positive thing that, hey, Paraguay can do it on neutral ground at the end of the day.
Yeah, it's actually the first time since 2017 that they've won two games outside of Paraguay in a row. So, I mean, because you're going back to they just beat Mexico, of course, in the US. So, I mean, this is positive considering the World Cup coming up. And I mean, I echo Fede's thoughts that this is like a nice start to the year, but also I think the narrative of the game, maybe it wasn't a great game, but the kind of we got some debuts in there. We saw a good performance from Lucas Romero, who was covering for Cubas. We started to answer some questions, and so there was a lot building into it. And I think we solved some problems, which I'm sure we'll talk about that we previously had against the US. So I think there's a lot of like, even though it's just a friendly in inverted commas, there's a lot of things we can pull out of this that starts to put you in good stead heading into the World Cup. And yeah, just from the stats side, because it's the first time they'd ever played in Greece a senior international, right? Of course, Paraguay has great memories of Greece, having won the silver medal there in 2004. But it's the 51st country they visited, 20th in Europe. And I think, yeah, I'm trying to think about Europe. They haven't lost many in recent years. So while they're struggling a lot in the US, remember we talked about that on previous shows that their record in the US isn't great, which obviously looking ahead to the World Cup is maybe more of a concern. But for whatever reason, when they come into Europe, despite not having many players that are from or that are playing in Europe, they still seem to turn it up. I think Paraguay's always had that mentality of getting up for the big games, right? So yeah, all round a lot of positives from this.
Absolutely. I guess we'll go into firstly, what we saw. And I think the first thing to start is in goal. I think we have to start with Gaston Alveida being in goal. He started the game. Obviously, I think that was all expected in the days leading up to this game. And, Ralph, I'll go to you first on this one. I thought he did well. I mean, also, I don't think he was fully tested as well, which I think is a good thing as well. But, during the times that Greece had shots, I think they had like 12 shots, but three only on target. So it shows that he wasn't really as fully tested as expected, but it gives him the assurance. I think he felt confident in his box, which I think obviously for those that watch him at Olympia and obviously know what kind of presence he is, I think that it shouldn't be something that is out of the ordinary. But yeah, I think for someone like him to get that opportunity, in your debut, sometimes the jitters of having your first chance play, especially being a player that is naturalized, coming from Uruguay now playing for a different national team. But, and we'll talk about Mauricio in a bit. But I think in terms of what he was able to show, I think you have to really acknowledge his sort of assurance, he would say, in goal in those 90 minutes.
Yeah, particularly I think because of who he's playing with. Like he's got right in front of him, players from Europe like Benitez and Alderete, and then obviously Gustavo Gomez has won everything in South America. So I mean, he had some kind of big players in front of him, and how did they feel with, let's call it, a local league goalkeeper behind them? I don't think we saw any issues there. And you said, yeah, about the saves. I think all three saves are from outside the box, quite straight at him. I can't remember like a particularly good one. The best chance that Greece got was the ones where they just went wide. There's a mistake by Almiron very early on in the game, right? And they chipped the ball wide. And then I remember one like flashing across the goal, and again it was just past the post. So he wasn't tested in that way. He looked good with his feet as well, so that's always going to be important. You're going to have to play a bit out the back. That's what Paraguay are trying to do, as we've seen. So all in all, I think yeah, pretty strong. What we know from Alfaro is he's going to put Orlando Gil in for the next game. He's like already announced it, so it's not like Gaston Oliveira is all of a sudden the number one choice. But I think what we've probably seen from that display is he's very, very close or really expected to be on the plane, right, to the World Cup. Maybe he won't be the starter, but I think he's definitely done enough to assure his place, because that's the reason Alfaro wanted to see him, right, and see how it goes in a more high pressure environment than say an Olympia game. So yeah, big good start for that position, which is somewhere we've been looking for cover, I think, and we're still maybe looking for the number one. I mean, I'm not saying Orlando Gil is definitely the number one, but you can see now maybe we're a bit more comfortable with the options there.
Fede, I wonder where this leaves Gatito. I mean, obviously you can mention Gatito afterwards, but I think Gaston, I think Ralph said it perfectly. I think Gaston really proved himself that he should be considered as one of the top goalkeepers on this national team, and maybe he won his ticket already in those 90 minutes over there in Greece.
He's not going to get much more than that, right? I mean, you don't have that many games heading into the World Cup. And I mentioned that last week. It might just be one game and you got to show your stuff. If you have three saves, then that's what you need to show, that you're ready for those kind of plays. And Gaston Alveida, he felt comfortable, I think, with the team. And I like what Gustavo Alfaro said before the game, that he saw that the goalkeepers got together, that Gatito took him out for a walk, that they talked with each other, that the group is strong, that it doesn't matter that Gatito was probably the starting goalkeeper at a certain moment, and now he looks like he's in a third spot behind Orlando Gil and even behind Gaston Alveida that had his opportunity in this game against Greece. I feel like our coach needs to make up his mind. I mean, we can't be boggling, going back and forth with different names in that specific position. I mean, there have been so many different names gone around, even during the qualifiers, guys. But I mean, we tested out different goalkeepers. And then when we got to Gatito, we felt like, okay, he's definitely going to be our goalkeeper. Now we're heading into the World Cup. And then all of a sudden he stops playing. He's barely getting any game time this last year, and Gaston Alveida got his papers ready, and I think he pulled through, and I think he needs to be the starter. After what I saw yesterday, I would put my money on him. I would love to see him in the World Cup, even though Orlando Gil is an interesting goalkeeper. I think he could still make some mistakes. He's still very young. And I felt like Gaston Almeida, even though it was his first game internationally, we have to say it, in Europe, I felt like he was very comfortable and he did his thing, guys. So he passed the test more than what I've seen from Orlando and way more than what I've seen from Gatito in this past 12 months.
Wow, you're really going into that, Fede. You're already sold on Olveda being the goalkeeper against the US in a few months' time. I think there's some people that are not ready to have that conversation or maybe are just still tempted by Gil and Gatito, but you're already full on I don't want to say the bandwagon, but on the hype train for that game.
I think you need to pick one. I think you can't head into just two more friendlies and then the World Cup. I think, the defense needs to know who's going to be the goalkeeper. I think the goalkeeper needs to feel the confidence from the coaches also. But so far, we heard of Gustavo Alfaro. No, I'm going to give him one game and Orlando the other one. Orlando has been the one that's been playing lately, but they're pretty much gonna come into the World Cup with the same amount of games even. So I don't know. I think we're gonna head into that first game against the U.S. and we're still gonna be asking ourselves who's gonna be the starting goalkeeper. And I don't like that. I think we should know by now.
I think also, Ralph, like what would be sort of in a way, it kind of feels weird what I'm about to say, but like kind of a lose-lose in the fact that okay, Gaston played well, and then let's say Orlando plays well against Morocco, and then it's like, okay, wait a minute, now we have two goalkeepers, we don't know what to do. It's almost creating a good problem, maybe even a bad problem for some people. But yeah, no, I think having that sort of doubt of like, oh my God, who's going to be my starting goalkeeper for the World Cup when two of my guys are performing well and obviously doing well with their national team too.
Yeah, it's the difficult decision, but I guess that's what Alfaro's paid for, right? He's going to be the one that has to make it because you have, I think, with Heel, you definitely have more of the longer term solution, right? Because one, he's younger, but also you can see like he's got this ability to keep kind of moving up. Olveda probably will stay at Olympia for the rest of his career or stay in South America, right? I don't think he's going anywhere else now. And so is Olveda more like the stopgap for this World Cup? I mean, the big thing we saw with Gil maybe is when he was in the national team, these was all of a sudden they're the biggest games he's like ever played, right? For Olveda, I mean, this was a big game, but it's still only a friendly, and he's played Libertadores and crunch Libertadores games. Um, so I don't know. I mean, like maybe he's just thinking, okay, Olveda gives me a bit more of the experience and maturity as a person, having been in the pressure situations. Maybe that's more what I need just for this World Cup, and he is going to be the person for the longer term. But I'm with Fede that you need to nail it down, right? That the time's running out. So I think we're doing the switch in these two games, which was kind of pre-announced, right? We knew he was going to play one each, and he was kind of forced into that Alfaro because, of course, Alveda he had to try him, right? I mean, he couldn't not try him, and then he probably had to say to Kiel, "Hey, I'm going to give you a chance as well because you can't just call someone up maybe and throw them in when Hill's done nothing wrong in theory, and also, like I was saying, he's probably your long-term solution, so you want to keep him on side." But then for the next two friendlies, which will come up in June, or late May or whenever it is, just before the World Cup, those are the two friendlies that I think you're going to have to keep the same guy, play those both games, and assuming they do fine, you throw them in for the group stages because you can't. I don't think we can keep doing this switching as well. Where I am, I don't know. I mean, but I think the real thing is Gatito's out of the question, right? I mean, it's not trying to be negative on what he's done in the past, or he basically got Paraguay here, right, through the
Yeah.
qualifiers. But I mean, essentially, he's just not playing. So if he's not playing, and you have two other guys playing, and they're doing fine when they play for the national team, you can't really throw the third goalkeeper in there at this point. It wouldn't make sense. So I think Gatito's there, a bit like Pepe Reina, if anybody remembers Pepe Reina, like when he was much older, he kept helping the team in terms of his like personality and his experience because Gatito's done it all. I mean, he's won a Libertadores not that long ago, remember? And so having him in the dressing room is important, but on the pitch, you're going to go with one of the other two.
Yeah, I think there is that case of like Gatito not being the starting goalkeeper at the moment. And hey, I think he's even flirting with maybe not even being on the squad. We'll know. Who knows? There's always other goalkeepers out there trying to do well. But yeah, I think it's interesting to see how this kind of goalkeeper change has switched off in the last basically year. Basically, it's just been incredible. And now let's go into the defense because obviously we saw some new names in the defense, both starting and heading into the subs. We started out with Alan Benitez, Gustavo Gomez, Omar Leret, and Junior Alonso. And the subs that came in, we saw some debuts. We saw Jose Canale, the Lanús defender, come in, as well as Alexander Maidana, the youngest player on the squad, coming in from, for Junior Alonso. And Gustavo Velasquez, who actually came in for Alan Benitez, the ninth sub of the night of the game, which was a funny way to think about it, considering that there was a new rule by FIFA that you can implement a ninth sub due to an injury. That's actually what happened with Alan Benitez in one situation. But nevertheless, going into this, and I'll go Fede on this one. I think the defense, I mean, obviously getting the clean sheet is what matters, but I do feel as if, though, from one sense that you saw a defense that I think did his job. I was definitely surprised by Alan Benitez. I think everyone was kind of worried about what he would do because of his, kind of his reputation, how that right back position as well as the left back position. We'll talk about Junior Alonso in a bit, but you felt like you didn't get that assurance that you get from Gomez and Alderete, who have been that starting center back for quite some time. I think I was surprised by Benitez in a good way. I think he really had a good game on all fronts overall. I don't think Alonso, again, I feel as if though he's the one that maybe is providing more question marks than answers to this one. And then the players that came in, I mean, you can only do so much in the 30 minutes that you can get, but ultimately, I think the defense played as well as they did, with some exceptions, of course, from the fullback position.
Yeah, if nothing goes wrong, it's going to be Gomez and Alderete, the starting back line for obviously the first game of the World Cup. But then you got to know, what else you have, right? And I loved, out of the names that stood out, and because it was the first time that we saw him with this team, Jose Canale, guys, the way that he came into the game, and mainly because I saw that Alderete really tired. I thought that he should have probably come out of the game before. He's one of those players that has played a lot this season. Also, Diego Gomez is another one. They barely have rested, right, during the whole season in England. But going back to that defense, I felt like Junior Alonso had trouble doing that first half on that left side, and he didn't get much help either. I would have loved to see more of Alexandro Maidana because we haven't seen him yet, right? I thought he was going to get much more game time, maybe the whole second half I was expecting he didn't, but maybe we'll see him in the second game a bit more. Just because we already know what Junior Alonso brings to the team, so you kind of want to see an option there, right? And you have so many players that right now are injured, and we need to find that second option to take there for the final list. I want to see more Alexandre Maidana. I don't think I saw enough of him in those late minutes that he got. And Ala Benitez, he's passing the test. He's been on the list these last couple of games, so I think he's pretty much in there, guys. I mean, I think he's the sub right now for Juan Cáceres. Cáceres is a starting a right back, but I think Alan is the one that suits that job. He's not that well defensively. He has trouble when they put a player on him, like the Greece did on that late part of the game. That's why we needed Gustavo Velasquez to come in. But you're not gonna get 9 subs in the World Cup, right? So you're gonna have to adjust that sense. Which side do you want to attack more? Is it going to be Alexandre Maidana eventually, or is it really going to be Alan Benitez, who once he starts heading up, it takes him a while to get back into his spot? Gustavo Gomez can take over there, but Alan really had trouble, at least in a couple of plays that he got left behind, and they really went through him.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I think you were asking why did Junior Alonso play so much of the game? I think it's because he wanted Benitez to play. Benitez basically played 90 minutes, right? He just came off at the very end. So I think maybe Alfaro wanted to see Benitez there, or maybe he needed to rest Cáceres. Cáceres has had a maybe had like a an injury or something. Or not an injury, but he was like managing him, so didn't want to use him. But if you do that and have someone so attacking, you can't really afford to have someone too attacking on the left. So that's why he goes with Alonso, who's more, like we said before, he's more a central defender, but you put him out there. The problem about putting him out on the left with Junior Alonso is, like you say, because he's more a central defender, he can get beaten by a good winger, one on one. He can struggle a bit. Um, so that's maybe, these are maybe the questions again for Alfaro is I think he has the right option, right? He can play, the starting would be with Cáceres on the right, Gomez, Alderete, and then probably he will play Alonso because it gives him a bit more of that balance. But then there might be a game when Cáceres isn't available and he's like, okay, maybe there I can put in Gustavo Velasquez, who's a bit more defensive, and I put my more attacking left back in someone like Maidana. So he might mix it up a bit, but I think ultimately we saw what we expected from those guys. And to Fede's point, Canale, when he came in, like he made a really good block, I remember towards the end. And I mean, he's just a guy that's on so much good form at the moment. And so having those players on good form to come in to the national team just for this kind of run of games for a World Cup, yeah, it's only 7 games, right? Well, you would hope it can be that many, but it's only a few games. If he can keep that form up, then why not use him? And so I think we're finding the great thing is we're finding just more and more options to start filling some of these gaps behind what the main starters are. Because like I say, I mean, is Gomez Alderete going to be your central defense pairing for sure?
Yeah, and I think it's also just trying to figure out, what works best, and I think we'll see that also in the game against Morocco, like what really stands out in the other reserves. Like obviously we'll see Fabian Balbuena play. We'll obviously see, other players that really don't get a chance on the squad to really prove themselves in a against a better opposition in that sense too. So I credit Alfaro for it. Looking into the midfield, this was an interesting sort of setup. So we had the two midfielders right behind the three that we'll talk. I guess in the attack we'll mention that, but the two midfielders, two different personalities in the sense of Lucas Romero and Damian Bobadilla. Lucas Romero, I think, was a name that I think obviously everyone was also expectant because he was kind of the guy to come in for Andres Cubas, who Fede, we've had some chats beforehand that we haven't seen. This Paraguay squad, ever since they qualified, really play with Cubas due to injury or due to other stuff. So, nevertheless, the way I think Romero performed, I think it was great. And I think he really proved himself. I think he was someone that really would demonstrated his class, really sticking between the lines and trying to break them. And, certainly as well being able to be comfortable in that position, which is hard. It's hard to be in that sort of position and try to perform well. And I think he did. I think he passed the test. I think he really did as much as he could, and I think he could be a wild card in this Paraguay squad of someone that could be deputized. I'm not saying he could be someone like Cuas who is all around and can be that ball winner, but I think Romero is being a good deputy in that sense, even more so than Ojeda, because I think he's the only one that's also fighting in that spot. But obviously Ojeda comes in for Damian in that sense. But no, I think he did well. I think also Galarza came in, and certainly everyone has his opinion on him, but you know I think that sort of the sixth role of those players, I think perfectly. I think they did well, and I think you have to give credit to Romero being able to be that sort of deputy for Cubas when he was not there.
Yeah, hopefully Andres Cubas doesn't have anything serious, and hopefully he comes back with his club quickly, right? Because we want to see him and we need him in action. Unfortunately, we didn't have him last time around, the last 2 games, and now we're not going to see him again with the team in these 2 friendlies. But yeah, it's definitely a spot we got to fill. We don't have another Andres Cubas in the squad, and Alfaro in the first list that he gave out, Lucas wasn't there. So he didn't have another defensive midfielder in the list. That's what, and that was weird for me. And then all of a sudden now he's a starter in this first game against Greece. It definitely has something to do with something that it wasn't considered, or it's something that they really need to fix, because Brian Ojeda wasn't the guy that was given the opportunity. It was Lucas Romero, and I think he pulled through. I think in the second half he really stepped it up from the aggressive point of it, and he really took over. He started recovering balls. He started getting physical, and that's what I want to see from a player that plays in that position. He needs to be the balance, and he doesn't need to go crazy when he has the ball. And that was something that I wanted to see in Lucas Romero, because I saw him a lot in Recoleta. And when he usually starts plays, or when he gets the ball, he usually starts heading up. He wants to finish the plays, and he needs to know that he needs to be the balance in this team. Andres Cubas doesn't head up that much. That's why he's so important. So when we lose the ball up there, the team is still organized, at least with the defense, right? With Andres Cubas right there in the middle. And I kind of saw that in certain moments with Lucas. He's very young and he gives it all. And he played for the team. I kind of love that. He even inspired, I believe, the players around him. And that's what I want to see, right? Because Damian Bobadilla is not that aggressive. He's very clean with the ball. He can give you the ball pretty much anywhere you need. But you're not going to get that from him. And we need an aggressive player to get the ball back, to fight against the big players, especially when we go against European teams. And I think Lucas Romero might have earned his spot in the final list, guys. I think he should be the player to fill in if Andres Cubas can't be in there. I'm not convinced by Brian Ojeda. I'm not convinced by other defensive midfielders. I really like what I saw from Lucas Romero, who has just left Paraguay and is now playing in Chile.
Yeah, we were, I think we were looking at it in a WhatsApp group somewhere. Like, it's quite rare you have a player playing in Chile start for the national team. I think Justo Villar might have been the last guy, right? So you're going back a while, but he's starting to show the qualities that you need. Again, it's a sub, right? You want Cubas is going to be your number one, and I think Cubas is maybe one of the hardest positions to fill, like we were saying, because Romero is still a different style of player, but he was like limiting himself to try and play more in that role and grew into it as the game went on. I thought the midfield as a whole actually were getting better as the game got on because in those first 20 minutes or so, we were struggling the exact same way we struggled against the US. That basically Greece was very organized and had a good press, and we wanted to try and play through it, and we couldn't with Bobadilla and Gomez because they didn't know how to like work it out between themselves. And so what it took really was Enciso pulling off from the wing and Enciso coming back and starting to carry the ball a bit. And that ruffled the feathers of Greece because they suddenly didn't know how they could defend this as well with someone running at them. And then Diego Gomez started doing the same, I think. And Diego Gomez really started to take over as he understood, okay, now I can see how we can hurt them in the build up. Whereas the early part, I was like, oh, this is very similar to the US game that the more organized team is stopping us playing and we're not finding the solutions. But I thought that the team kind of worked towards it. When Galarza came on, I think he was more interesting in this setup than Boadilla just because of the style of play he is, because he's a bit more physical. He can carry the ball, and that was definitely working for Paraguay. I mean, the game got way more stretched after the goal, so it's maybe not a fair comparison on Boadilla, but I just thought we'll have to think about that in games where if we're struggling to pass our way through, then I think it's going to be you're going to have to bring in someone like Galarza that can make a difference. But maybe I'm jumping here, but really the big difference was Julian Enciso because it was in Enciso that when he's figured out the space and how to get in that half space, then it was like he was causing all kinds of problems for Greece.
Yeah, and we'll actually talk about the attack now because obviously we saw an interesting one. We saw obviously Enciso, Almiron in the flanks, and then obviously Diego Gomez, who we'll obviously talk about because it was his birthday. He celebrated his birthday with a goal, a fantastic free kick right outside the box, and I think it also kind of saved his performance because it wasn't. I don't think it was the best Diego Gomez performance out there. I think he did look a little bit erratic. He had a chance right there to open it up fairly early on in the first half, and he rushed it, so he couldn't get the chance to play the ball or even to shoot. And obviously with Tony Sanabria playing at the attack, Ralph, I think, well, firstly we got to talk about like you said, Diego Gomez getting that goal, and yeah, a great way to score, I think, as well. I think we've obviously, like you talked about, players really performing on form, and we obviously saw that with Gomez doing well at Brighton. So for him to score, especially in the way that he did, first free kick for Paraguay since 2012 from Jonathan Favreau. So it's been 14 years since Paraguay have been able to score from a set piece that is not a corner kick, and to score from a free kick. I think hey, it shows that Paraguay can be deadly on all fronts. But yeah, credit to him and obviously to Enciso, who I think was my man of the match for me. I think it was man of the match for a lot of people. Just him, breaking the lines and being able to really stretch the Greek opposition and is the difference maker. I think he is really this X factor, and I think a lot of the players will look at him as being the guy that is able to make things change for Paraguay, even if the question marks are still open for striker, which we'll talk about as well, because obviously we saw um, we saw also some players come in that had the chance to go in. Obviously, Gustavo Caballero making his debut, who I think was all right. He did decently well, but wasn't the best. We saw also the debut of Mauricio coming in as well, which I think a lot of people were very happy about, and I think he performed as well. I think he also is kind of a difference maker, as shown in that little cameo. But yeah, I think the attack. There's a lot we can go in for him, so feel free to go on what stood out for you right now, and then Fede, you can go in as well to discuss.
Well, I'm glad you said that stat about the free kick because as I looked at Paraguay, like had this whole conference around the free kick and like who's going to take it when they, and I was like, this is a big conference for something that's probably not going to produce a goal. I was very skeptical. But what I could see there was, I think Gustavo Gomez was eventually like, as captain, saying that Diego Gomez is going to take it, not Julian Cesar, because of course, Cesar would, if it's up to him, he'll take every set piece because he's that kind of player. And so I think there was something, and you could see like Gustavo like hammering some kind of point to him. So if he was saying keep it low, then that's a great piece of captaincy from Gustavo Gomez. Because as you look at the free kick, what Diego does is he aims where the two Paraguayan players are in the wall, and they kind of split so the ball goes through like low instead of trying to go over the defensive wall. So if that's the case, well done to Gustavo Gomez, who helps really, I suppose, overrule and make sure that Diego gets his chance. And it's great for him to score in his 23rd birthday, his third goal now for the national team in about 20 or so appearances. So he hasn't scored a lot, but he scores the important ones, right? I think that's the third winner he scored because he scores obviously the winner against Brazil and he scored, I think it was a 2-1 in his other, or maybe it was a tie. But he's always getting the important goals. I thought Mauricio was very exciting when Mauricio came on. You started to see a lot of quality. What I would guess Mauricio is going to be like is more a sub to come in and break something down in the 65th, 70th minute. I don't think you can start Mauricio because he doesn't have, we talked about this before, I think, but he doesn't really have that that defensive like capabilities if you're going to have him and Enciso. I think that would be a bit complicated, but definitely Mauricio when he came on technically very good, very exciting. So I think that's like just another weapon that Paraguay are going to have thinking about when they make changes and coming off the bench. And yeah, I mean, ultimately, Enciso was for me the best player on the pitch. I mean, he was the one that made a difference, right? He's the one that does something where that other teams all of a sudden can't contain him, and that you can really throw teams off balance. So I think Enciso he's playing some of his best football. He's playing regularly, and so he's contributing in different ways and very exciting. The one question mark, I guess, is Sanabria. I saw him just at times like a bit. It just physically wasn't there to do the work he's meant to be doing in terms of holding up, and so. But then who else do we have? This is what we talked about with the nine position. Like, is Alex Arce going to be able to do something different? I don't know. So, but there's still question marks. And now for Sanabria, it's been such a long time since he scored a goal. He tried an overhead kick, right, but didn't didn't connect in the game. But yeah, I think there's still maybe a little question mark there of if we're gonna have someone that's not scoring do we need someone that's just a bit more physical holding the ball up? And then do we look outside of Sanabria or is there another opportunity? So we'll have to see. But all in all, I thought Encisa was probably my man of the match there going forward. He was just very exciting and really unbalanced Greece when they've been very organized and he kind of brought the chaos and they weren't able to deal with him.
Yeah, I'm gonna start right there where Ralph finished it off, right? With the number nine and the center forward. I'm also concerned, guys. I mean, Tony is not playing enough. He even said it before the game when he was sitting right along the coach, and he said, "Thankfully, they keep bringing me because I'm barely playing in my club. I'm not happy with the minutes I'm getting this season." And he was very honest about it. Heading into the World Cup, it might even have to be a strategy thing, maybe putting him in the second half, maybe put in a fighter out there in the center forward position. We did that in the qualifiers, right? I remember putting Pita in there in this first half against the big teams, stress the center backs, and then put in Tony Sanabria to finish the job in the second half. He scored a whole bunch of goals that way. He might have to do that maybe in the World Cup because you're not going to have a player that's ready for 90 minutes. That's why you're going to need Avalos, Arce to be ready. Arce had an opportunity in the second half. He should have scored. Avalos, I want to see him in this game against Morocco to see just how well he does with a World Cup caliber kind of team. And Tony, he's ready for it. He's definitely going to be a player that's going to get the best out of the team once I think Mauricio gets in there because Mauricio can take care of the ball. He can put those passes for Tony that I don't think Julio Enciso is still looking for or that he's not getting from Almiron or Diego Gomez while they're fighting for the ball, right? I mean, that's what Mauricio brings into the equation, guys. And Gustavo Alfaro said it also. We don't have a player like Mauricio. And now we have a player that can arrange things in the midfield and the attacking game of the team. So I love what Mauricio brings to the team. We barely got a glimpse of him with Enciso and Almiron. I don't know if we're going to see much more of that in this game against Morocco because you kind of want to see how they can link up. If you need to attack in a game, if you need to score goals, he's definitely gonna be important. And he came really into what Mauricio can do for this Paraguayan team. He felt really comfortable out there. And Julio Enciso, guys, I mean, just when you think we've seen enough from this kid, he just takes it up again, right? And this is the Julio Enciso I wanted to see heading into the World Cup. So for me, it was just getting up at the end of the game and applauding our MVP. He was definitely the guy that took us there because, yeah, Diego Gomez scored the goal. It was a fantastic shot, but he wasn't the best player in the game. It was definitely Julio Enciso taking over the ball in midfield, taking the team up there when they needed. Almiron also kind of carried the team in certain spots, but Julio Enciso, he's so uncomfortable for defenders. He's so uncomfortable for midfielders, and he attracts so much attention. We don't have another player like Julio, and if he heads this way into the World Cup, we're just going to be delighted about what he can bring to the team. I mean, he made so many good plays out there, and he looks like he's grown physically also, like he can carry the defenders with him. And he put in a couple of nice passes also that should have finished that his teammates should have finished a bit better, but you never know what he's going to give it to you because he always waits until the end. He always waits to make a play. He's always faking out defenders. He's so smart. He is definitely a player that can bring a spark into the game. And I think if he heads into the World Cup this way, guys, I mean, I don't know. He could be one of the stars in the next World Cup. I'm really blown away by Julio Enciso and what he did in this game.
Yeah, I think it's really demonstrative of how important he is, and he's still so young. He's only 22, and the fact that he's able to demonstrate that on all fronts, I think, is incredible. So ultimately, I think Paraguay can feel very happy with this win, and heading into the game against Morocco now, we'll obviously have a special guest to talk about it at the end. But yeah, I think what are some of the things that you want to see from Paraguay differently? I mean, obviously, we're going to have a different squad in comparison to what we've seen in previous games, and in this case, the previous game that we had. But yeah, just what you feel as if though what you want to change. Ralph, I'll go to you first. What's something that you want to see from the Paraguay squad?
Well, I think what I'd like to see is from the midfield to figure out or solve the problem quicker. So they worked it out against Greece eventually, but it's maybe can they do that a bit quicker when it's like we're not going to be able to play through the team. Okay, this is when we need Enciso dropping or Diego needs to go maybe a bit wider. He started to go very wide on the right to try and stretch, and I think just trying those things maybe a bit earlier in the game to start to figure it out. But ultimately, I'm pretty pleased. I mean, a 1-0 away win is. We'll take these, we'll take it against either it's going to be Kosovo or Turkey, right? The European opponent now. We know it's one of those two. So I'll take a 1-0 very similar to this against either of those two teams. and pretty pleased. Also, I guess the other thing against Morocco will be to see the striking role. Like if we do see Avalos, can he do something a bit different that Sanabria was not able to do, especially holding up the ball? I just didn't think Sanabria. He looked like a guy that's not playing a lot at the moment, so he really needed like a long time to grow into the physicality of the game. So hopefully Avalos can do it from the start.
Fede?
Yeah, I would say not much, guys. I'm not expecting much changes. I think he's gonna maintain most of the base of the team, and he's definitely gonna use those players that didn't get the chance to play. But six subs apparently he's gonna be able to do in this game. So I think we're gonna see the same thing. It's gonna be about who passed the test in this last game and who earned more minutes. Maybe even, maybe it's gonna come down to that situation. And in that sense, I do think Mauricio should see him a bit more out there. I think we should see a bit more of Avalos, of Arce, one of the center forwards. Also, I think Sanabria needs to rest a bit more. And and definitely go and see if Alexandro Maidana is really ready to make that final cut, right? Because you're gonna be waiting on Blas Riveros, who's gonna get recovered. I don't think he's gonna make it really to the list. In the midfield, you're gonna wait for Matias Villasanti, but he's probably not gonna make it either. So when you're gonna have to make that final cut to 26, and you're gonna have to come down to decisions, it's gonna come down also to these last friendlies. And I do think it is that opportunity, that last opportunity for a lot of these players. And I hope that they can make the difference. I didn't like the way that Gustavo Caballero carried himself in this game. I thought that he had a couple of mistakes and he needs to make it up in this second match against Morocco. Hopefully he does fit in a bit better and he does what Gustavo Alfaro said he needs to do, right? Which is finish his plays, because he's definitely very strong and a very fast player, but he barely ends his plays scoring, and that's something that he needs to fix to be able to get more game time, or maybe even make it to that final list.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's going to be a lot of final tests for a lot of these players. It really is the final test for them. And, again, I agree. I think we need to hopefully see the same Paraguay, hopefully take some more protagonism. And hey, against Morocco, a team that obviously is the AFCON champion, who've been one of the better teams in the world in the last couple of years, with some great players on all fronts. I think for them to get something out there would be a big statement for not just us, but also for the rest of the world to see that, hey, Paraguay can still perform well and have that build momentum heading into the World Cup. So obviously we'll be discussing that game. And before we do close out, we will obviously talk to one of our experts in Morocco, Amine El Amri, who is a Moroccan sports journalist, to talk about what to expect from Morocco and, of course, what to expect from this game against Paraguay. And we're back here to preview this Paraguay-Morocco game that is happening in Lens on Tuesday. And to do that is with Moroccan sports journalist Amine El Amri, who will discuss everything that's going on from Morocco, from this team that obviously has gotten a lot of attention, the Atlas Lions, as people like to call them, the recent AFCON champions, as we know, we'll talk about that maybe in a bit as some controversy there, but they are officially the AFCON champions at this moment. But nevertheless, they will play this game against Paraguay, obviously a big game for both teams as they obviously prepare for their World Cup aspirations. And yeah, I mean, I'll go to you first. Firstly, because we're obviously coming off of two different results for both our countries. Paraguay, we just discussed their win against Greece. Morocco tied Ecuador, another South American country, over there at the Metropolitano in Madrid. It ended 1-1. So I just wanted to firstly, obviously, introduce you and, talk about that game and, yeah, just heading into this one against Paraguay, which, I think we can both agree that it's going to be a really interesting test for both these teams because it really is going to show how much that they've improved in the last year or so.
Hi, Roberto, hermano. Nice to be with you guys talking about the World Cup. And yeah, I'm very optimistic seeing that Morocco and Ecuador were, held to a draw, but it was a very, very intense game. So many things that both Bekasese and Mohamed Ouabi tried along this game, especially in the second half. So it is a very good test. It was on a neutral ground, so it kind of reminds everybody of the World Cup. And speaking of context, this puts us 4 years back, because in 2022 we have changed the manager 3 months before the World Cup, and faced two South American sides, one of which is Paraguay in the second game. So that's history repeating itself again in football. And yeah, I'm very, very excited about our game against Paraguay, because it's a obviously different approach from Ecuador. Uh, Less physical, but more tactical, especially with a guy like Alfaro at the helm. So I think it's going to be very, very interesting, not only because of that, but because of the growth that Paraguay has been on since last time we met in Spain.
Yeah, that's exactly what I wanted to ask you about. I mean, we're saying is like going back these 4 years, and there's all these kind of deja vu moments. But Paraguay in the last, I remember that game. It was a 0-0 draw, but Paraguay actually were very lucky. They survived a lot because of Anthony Silva, the goalkeeper at the time, who helped them. But I was looking at the teams, and actually, I would say maybe about half of this Paraguay team is still there, but it
Yeah.
was players that were very young at the time. So you had Diego Gomez, who was just making his debut. You had, I think Galarza was just in there. Julian Cisa was still at Libertad. So, I mean, he was not the player he is now. So we feel Paraguay has grown a lot from this last match, the last time the teams faced. But what about Morocco? I mean, what have you seen maybe in the last 4 years from a team that obviously went on to do history at the World Cup after that game? But now they're AFCON champions, and now they're looking maybe going into this World Cup with more pressure than they've ever had to do before because of the success they've been having.
That's exactly right, Ralph, because in 4 years' time, Morocco has been elevated to a status of favorite. I mean, going in the Qatar World Cup in 2022, we were around the 25th to the 30th place in the FIFA ranking. Now we're eighth. We have come a long way also in the AFCON, even though I do not prefer that AFCON champion, because I'm obviously a very competitive guy. I wanted to win it on the pitch, but on the other hand, yes, the pool of players is way, way, way higher than it was in 2022. Like the front line, for example, has completely changed. Instead of Ziyech, Boufal, and then Nesiri, we've got now Brahim Diaz, Abdi Zilzouli, and somebody between Ayoub El Kaabi and maybe sometimes a false nine with Saibari. So all of them very regular, either Champions League or Europa League. They all play in Big Five championships, with the exception of El Kaabi, who plays in Greece in Olympiacos, which is a very, very good side also. But but above it all, and I like this expression more in Spanish. Más allá de la performance of what Morocco has been presenting in those years is the shift in the mindset. This is a completely different side. Like, for example, I'll give you a very good example. If we draw against Ecuador in the friendly game on Friday, it was because of the mindset and not anything else. This game, in every other era of Moroccan national team, would have been lost, because we would be overwhelmed with facing such a strong and great side. But since Qatar's World Cup, the mindset has shifted, and this team is trying, not getting there, but is trying to accept and go into competition with the cape of the favorite, and that's something that's really, really different.
Amin, it's nice to see you. Thank you for being here. Perez here from Paraguay. And we're very excited to play Morocco because this team has earned so much respect over the years. You guys have grown so much, just as you said, from the pool of players and uh, as a team itself. I think you guys should feel confident pretty much playing anybody in this World Cup now. And I want to talk about this game in particular against Paraguay. Do you feel Morocco fans feel like we're going up against a team that we should beat, or has Paraguay also kind of earned their respect after what they've done in the qualifiers? Do you feel Morocco fans have already a sense of what Paraguay can do in a game against them, or they feel no, we're the much stronger side right now?
Well, thanks, Fede, for that question because it kind of gives me the opportunity to speak about the Moroccan average fan. We're crazy about football over here, so everybody follows everything that's connected to football. We were talking about some time ago with Roberto about Miguel Almiron, and believe it or not, he has fans here in Morocco. They love that special left leg, and yeah, we've been following obviously the World Cup qualifiers. Some of us are very, very happy, especially for you guys to make it to the World Cup again. But make no mistake, everybody respects Paraguay. We all know that the country, the football team is the mirror of the country, and it goes and it's valid for Morocco, for France, for everywhere, and for Paraguay also. We know that Paraguay is in the middle of those big South American nations, and in order to survive, it has to be very well organized and not take water from any side. So I think that reflects on the national team, no matter the era. And I think for that, people respect very, very much the team of Paraguay. We're not going overconfident because obviously we're still kind of in the trauma of the AFCON final. But I think we're going into this game with lots of respect for this Paraguayan team.
And I want to ask you, because this is something that I've heard over the years, there's a national plan in Morocco for 2030 that they've done so many things in the country to head that way, right? And it has really been a national plan. Is it a reality? Do Morocco fans feel it? Like it's having its effect? Do you see football now everywhere in Morocco? Do you think that 2030 can really be the year for Morocco, especially because you guys are also going to be part of the World Cup hosting it?
Yeah. I think it's a reality because football has always been there in every corner in Morocco. Every street, everything round shaped was served as a football, but it all needed scientific approach. It all needed real goals, realistic goals, and realistic ways to doing so. So we have accepted that we have a big diaspora across Europe and across the world. Actually, there are some players that play now with the U.S. soccer youth teams, but would join the national team of Morocco in the future. The opportunity is there, but also we needed to have scientific approach for the kids over here in Morocco. They needed training, they needed scientific footballing training, they needed tactical culture and physical abilities, because the talent is there, the technicity is there. All of this needed to be put in a mold and take out the perfect Moroccan player, which is something that is very technical but lacks a tactical culture and lacks physical abilities. So that those kids from Europe bring the standards, the very high standards in which they were trained, but also with a culture of, we want to defend our country because it is obviously their country. On the other hand, you can see those results, the work that has been started in 2009, 10, and started to take pace around 2015, 2016, 2017, is now paying not only on the A team, who is eighth, like I said, in the FIFA ranking, but under 20 World Cup champions, under 17 quarterfinalists. The women's team is also making it in all across all categories. The futsal is 3 times in a row African champions. You can see the clubs also, 2 clubs in the semifinals on the same side in the African Champions League. 2 clubs that won 5 of the last 6 CAF African Confederation Cup. So you can see that the results are there, and that makes the train, take more and more steam and more rhythm.
I think going into this World Cup, because I think everyone's going to focus on the one that's happening in the States, or in America, I should say. Going into that, I mean, do you feel as if though Morocco can repeat what they did 4 years ago? Is this something that obviously, when you do it once, I mean, we feel the same way as Paraguayans. When we went to a quarterfinals 16 years ago in South Africa, there are people out there that believe that with the team that we have and how much we've improved there, that hey, they can repeat it again, even if they haven't been in such a long time. This isn't the case for Morocco because they are back straight to a straight competition, to another competition. So do you feel as if though heading into this group, and in the group with Haiti, with Scotland, with Brazil, another South American team, do you feel as if though they can strive to go further than they did before? Or do you feel as if though there is still that sort of expectation that the other teams, the big powerhouse teams, can still find their way to beat them?
Well, in a close tournament, it really depends on your pathway, and it's gonna be very hard, very hard. It's very hard to find two successful teams in a 4-year span making the same performance. Like, for example, we could go for Germany in the 80s, or Brazil, obviously, between 94 and 2002, with different teams, different managers, different contexts. Croatia also. But it is hard because of what happened in the last months. In the last couple of months, like I say, the trauma of the AFCON is going to be there. But I'm not finding it impossible. And that was the shift in the mindset that I was talking about. It's 10 years ago, you would have told me we're going 3 times in a row in the World Cup. I would be celebrating. And now the bar is so high that you could watch this Moroccan team and think, yeah, why not make it from 2026? Let's not wait for 2030. But it's going to be hard. There's huge job that's waiting for Mo Wahbi from here to the World Cup, especially motivate those players. We know that those players in their vast majority are players on a higher level. They can do it. I mean, if it's from technical and tactical point of view, they can do it. What differs now is the head, what's going on inside there. It's going to be something that it's worthy of exploring. I think this ambition is now legal for Moroccans. And I think it's a path that's worthy of exploring.
And I think a lot of Paraguayans also feel the same way as well, that they feel like, you see the success stories in a way of Morocco, Croatia, those kind of, the teams that are not of the high tier going far in going far in tournaments, they can strive to dream. And, I don't want to say dark horse, obviously, but, it's a feeling that, hey, there are, like my dad always likes to say, no team in the world is a small team anymore. It doesn't matter, that you have to compete against because everyone's evolved in the last 10, 20 years. So
exactly. Everybody's working. It depends on how serious you work and to what extent are you willing to invest in football. Because if you put serious work, if you put serious mindset into it, you're gonna get there. There's no secret in football anymore.
Absolutely. But we do need to get some secrets out there, and that's our prediction. So I'll leave you for last, that means, but I do want everyone else's prediction. Fede, I'll go to you first. How do you see this game between Paraguay and Morocco being played in Lens, actually? And Lens has some historic factor in Paraguay. It was the game that they lost to France in that historic round of 16 game at the 98 World Cup, the golden goal from Laurent Blanc. So maybe some demons in there, Fede, to motivate some guys from Paraguay, even if they weren't even born to live it over there at the Stade Bollard d'Elise. But how do you see this game going on between Paraguay and the eighth best team in the world according to FIFA World Rankings?
Well, this is going to be our last game officially before we head to the World Cup. There's going to be one more friendly, but it's going to look more like a practice, I think, against Qatar. So, heading into the World Cup, I would love to win. I wanted to win at least one of these two games. We already beat Greece, so I would be comfortable with a tie even against Morocco. They're a very respected team. I think they're going to score on us, not just once. I think they're going to get 2 goals on us, but we're going to make a fight out of this game, and we're going to end up going 2-2 on Morocco, and we're both gonna head into the World Cup feeling good about ourselves.
2-2. Okay, Ralph, what do you got?
So Fede's going with what we saw I think in Asia, right? Was it 2-2
It
with
was, yeah, against
Korea?
Japan.
With Japan, yeah, when we went behind. I mean, last time it was the 0-0, but honestly, we were very lucky to get away with the 0-0. Paraguay's a much improved team, but like I mean, has been telling us, so is Morocco. So I'll be happy to get out of there with a score draw as well. I think maybe a 1-1. We'll go behind. Somebody's gonna come off the bench and score a goal, probably from a set piece. That's where I
You
think
want
we'll.
another Diego Gomez goal, don't you? You want something
There you
like
go.
that.
Yeah, that works for me.
I'm also gonna say 1-1 actually. I feel like it's gonna be a really tight game. I'll even put you I'll give you a goal scorer. I'm gonna say, you just mentioned Almiron, I mean, so I'll put him to score and I'll give Brahim Diaz. I think Brahim Diaz gets the goal. So I think all of us will feel happy with a 1-1 draw. Unless, I mean, you want to say something different, but what do you say for this game?
No, I think Morocco is still struggling with defensively organized team, and I think Paraguay is one of the best in that register. So if there is a victory, I think it's gonna be for Morocco because there is, yeah, I have to admit there is a difference in technicality in the scale, but yeah, I think it's gonna be very, very narrow. If it's a victory for Morocco, I think it's gonna be a 2-1 or a 1-0. But other than that, I think it's gonna be a draw.
Okay, all right. I guess we're all across the board then. That no one is. Well, I mean, said you want Morocco to win if it was the case. But no, it should be fun. It should be a really good game, and I'm really excited to do it. So before I let you go, and again, thank you so much for doing this. Where can everyone find your work?
Yeah, I'm deputy chief editor for Squad by Dozem. It's a national TV station. We're in charge of anything social media about it, and our publication is really independent from the TV work. But I also do a couple of things for BBC Africa, BBC World Service. Of course, the Guardian portraying of Morocco for the World Cup is going to be there. I had some pieces around in CNN Brazil, for example, and Africa as a Continent, which is a website I love to work for. And yeah, let's just wait for the World Cup, and maybe we will see more of me. I don't like to speak about myself.
Well, look, if we face each other, again, you have no choice. All of the Paraguayans are going to have to speak to
Yeah, I
you.
would prefer a very, very good glass of some beverage. I want
Love it.
in around Connecticut or New York State.
There you go. We'll take a Smirnoff Ice again, like we did last time. All right. Well, thank you so much, Amine, for coming. I appreciate it, and thank you for us for listening as we close out another great episode of Guarani Vision, and obviously previewing this Morocco game for myself, Roberto Rojas, Fede Perez, and Ralph Hanna. Thank you so much for listening in. See you soon.